Okay, welcome to session 2 of Finance 1050. Hopefully all of us are doing well, and I hope that all of you, everything is working out well. Angie tells me the majority, if not all of you now, are working at home, as I am, and so this is kind of the new normal that we're getting used to. Want to review a few items just to make sure that we're all on the same page. And again, I would just say, if you're not getting these items or don't understand them, please give me a call or text or email me. My telephone number is 801 910 8499, as we mentioned. And again, I have no problem with you calling, especially during these times. But I wouldn't give the number out if I didn't want you to call. I've actually had a handful of you called to go over the stock assignment, and I think it was very helpful. It only took a few minutes to go through the different transactions and make sure that you were doing it correct. Okay, first of all, last week we had the first lecture. It was in 2 parts. This is going to be 2 parts. It's going to be about 20 minutes in part 1 on YouTube, and then another 20 minutes. So only a total of about 40 minutes or so. Last week there was a 5-point assignment. As you know, just like when we were holding class over at Discover on Tuesday afternoons, we'd have our 5-point assignment. And your assignment from last week is, why would you not invest? And the majority of you have sent that in. Some of you have not. So make sure you email it to me. Just give me a reason why you probably would not at this time invest or want to open a mutual fund or go into the stock market, and that is fine. I certainly understand some of the reasons. We're going to go over that in a couple minutes. I would just remind you of some of your big assignments to make sure that we're on track, because in a couple days will be April the 1st, and we're moving into our last month, hard to believe, as we move toward the first week of May when this class will be done. There is the book report and the term paper. A couple of you have already sent it in. We'll do no oral presentation, as I mentioned, so make sure that you write it up, 4 to 5 pages, and send it in, and then I will acknowledge that and give you credit. We're still doing the budget assignment. We really haven't talked about that in a few days. The budget assignment is for the months of February, March, and April. So we've got another month to go in tracking our expenses. So make sure that you're doing that. And then, of course, we talked about the investment assignment last week. I just want to make sure, here are the 3 pages. One was the explanation. Number 2 is a list of the stocks that are found on the Dow Jones Industrial Average and a couple of other Dow Jones indices. So that will help you pick your 10 stocks. I would think one of them you might want to pick would obviously be Discover. And then this is the tracking sheet, and that's where you may have a question. If you have a question, again, give me a call. But the essence of this assignment is to pick 10 stocks, $10,000 imaginary investments, and track those stocks once a week at what their price is. And their price will fluctuate. It'll go up or go down. The market is really fluctuating because of the strange and different times that we're in with the coronavirus. But the way you'll find out is each week you'll go into Google and just put in Discover stock price today, and it'll come right up so you can see where your stock goes over the 5 weeks that you track it. If you have questions then on how much you net out, how many shares you have, again, please give me a call so that we can make sure that we're all on the same page. Okay, I want to talk a little bit about investing. And first of all, your 5-point assignment for today that you'll need to email me this week so you can get 5 more points is, as you start to invest, which may be now, maybe down the road. I certainly understand if you don't invest. I think I told everyone that on your 20-point assignment, to open a mutual fund, the bonus points, I'm giving everyone that because of the difficult times it is now, maybe to be able to invest, the uncertainty with the stock market. Some of you may have some uncertainty with your family, jobs. I know My wife and I have done an evaluation, if you will, of our 7 children and how they're all handling this crisis financially and otherwise. So if the timing's not right to invest, that is fine. So I'll give everyone those 20 points. But I would hope down the road that you would take a look at it. Let's talk about many of your responses on last week's assignment. Why wouldn't I invest? Number one reason is I don't understand. And I think that is probably the main reason. Every one of you should have this sheet. It says mutual funds. I've given you 6 mutual funds, as I mentioned last week, the name of it and their website that you can go into. I can promise you they're all very well run. I don't know that I'd recommend one over the other. I've used a couple of these from time to time and have been very satisfied. So I would encourage you to go in when the time is right, hopefully sooner rather than later, as we get through these challenging times that face us all. But you can generally open these accounts for $50 to $100, and then out of your checking account, you can have withdrawn as much or as little as you would like. Again, the advantage of a mutual fund is you get immediate diversification. They invest the money in literally thousands of different stocks. You get professional management. Mutual funds are run by people who have a background, a degree, and experience in finance. And so you get that professional management. As we mentioned, also another great advantage of mutual funds to invest in the stock market in general, it is what we call liquid. As you want to pull your money out from time to time, it generally takes 72 hours or 3 business days, as we say, to get your money out. So there are a lot of advantages to investing, and mutual funds is how you can access the stock market. Now, as we think about the stock market, I just want to reiterate, as you invest, whether it's in stock, in mutual funds, or some of the common stocks that we're going to talk about in this lecture on YouTube, I want you to realize, first of all, this is a long-term program for building wealth, okay? And we are in it for the long haul. And what is long haul? I've told you this many times. It's the rest of your life. Now, that doesn't mean as you reach some goals from time to time that you cannot take some money out, and I think you should. This is not a retirement program. That's your 401k. This is over and above. But if you reach your goals, certainly no problem in taking some money out, reinvesting, or using it for the given goal. Number 2, there is risk in the stock market. We talked about the relationship, the direct relationship between risk and return. And the greater the potential return on an investment, the greater the risk. It is always that way. And as we've mentioned, any scam artists always seem to say that you can get great return for little or no risk. It's impossible. It's like I've said, it'd be like me telling you the sun's going to rise in the west tomorrow. It's not going to happen. So risk versus return, you need to know that particular principle. Again, I'd remind you in the stock market and when you invest, over the last 125 years that the stock market's been around, actually I think it's closer to 140. It was the late 1860s when the Dow Jones Industrial began. But the greatest return by far has been in the stock market. I remind you of the essay I gave you, the article on Ann Scheiber. Ann Scheiber, what an inspiring story. She worked for the IRS. It's kind of a mid-level or low-level clerk. She perused and examined tax returns, and the one common element she found of people that were very wealthy and had made a lot of money is they invested in common stocks in the stock market. Of course, they didn't have mutual funds back then, but that's how you can access it for relatively low amounts of money. The other reason that some of you put, and this is certainly a true reason, is you're scared. And it is scary to invest, and especially right now with this coronavirus and the devastating effects it's having on our economy. So I would just say this. Sooner or later, we're going to get through the coronavirus. We'll move past it. In fact, I was reading the other day and saw a special in the 1919, over 100 years ago, when they had the Spanish flu influenza here in the United States. But we'll get through this. Somewhere down the line, when you feel comfortable, hopefully sooner rather than later, you'll set up an investment program. Again, the act of investing, in my opinion, is more important, especially at first, than the money you put in to it. You start investing, I promise you, you will never regret it, and you'll only do more and more as time marches on. Okay, now your assignment for this week. As you think about an investment program, whether you're going to invest now or down the road, and this is over and above your retirement, which is your 401k and some of the other elements we'll talk about in that down the road. But I want you to tell me and email me a goal or two, one or two, no more than that, what goal you have if you start investing. What is it, something that you would like to accomplish in the future? That could be adding on to your home, a remodel, a vacation, an emergency fund that Dave Ramsey talked about. There's any variety of items. So send me that so you can get your 5 points for this week. Okay, once again, we're doing this in two parts. And by the way, I want to mention one other thing. Angie will be mailing you or emailing you the links to these two lectures for lecture 2, these 2 parts. She's also going to email you the link to the Susie Orman video. The Susie Orman DVD is the 9 Steps to Financial Freedom. It takes about an hour and a half, so I want you to watch that. Just email me and tell me you did. You get 5 points credit. And then the last week of April during that lecture, I'll hit the high points of it that I think are most relevant and important. And obviously you'll be responsible on the second exam for probably 4 or 5 questions on that, just like the Dave Ramsey video. Okay, let me grab the textbook here, and we are excited to move on, and we're in chapter 14. And if you will open your textbook, you can follow along on 488. We're going to talk about investing in common stocks. Now, again, when you set up a mutual fund, for the most part, that's what you're going to be doing. But we're going to talk just about common stocks in particular. I remind you again, the Miss Scheiber, Ann Scheiber, when she passed away at 101 in 1995 or so, as I remember writing that article, but her investments were mainly in common stocks. Okay, common stocks on page 489 are a form of equity. And when you buy common stock in a corporation, you actually become a part owner. Now, in big corporations like Ann Scheiber invested in, like you might invest in, you take a look at your sheet, you look at this sheet of the Dow Jones Industrials, Alcoa, American Express, Bank of America, Walmart, some of these big companies. Obviously, when you buy stock, you have ownership, but it's very minute. That's not the reason people buy stock, is to buy ownership into a company. The reason they do is that they think over time the stock will do 2 things. Number 1, increase in value, which generally they do as the stock market goes up. And number 2, they will pay dividends. And that is how we can increase wealth, by investing in the stock market. And when you do it in a mutual fund, you get those same benefits. Now, again, the value of the stock generally will go up over time as the stock market goes up. Again, there are fluctuations in the stock market. We have seen that quite graphically in the last 2 or 3 weeks as the coronavirus has come up. But again, we're in it for the long term. And again, if you look at the long term and you think about all the things that the stock market has gone through, that our country's gone through, you think of 2 world wars, the Depression, the Arab embargo in the early 1970s or mid-1970s, and you think of the recession we had about 10, 12 years ago. We've gotten through all those, and we've come out just fine. So we're in it for the long term. So number 1, over time, stocks will generally increase in their value. And then They will pay dividends. Dividends are paid out by the board of directors out of net earnings, assuming that the company makes money. And dividends are not guaranteed. They have to be declared by the board of directors. But most companies pay dividends to keep the stockholders happy and increase the value of the stock. Now, when you own common stock, you do get, let me remember one point on dividends. As you set up a program, even on your mutual fund, they'll say, how do you want your dividends? In more shares or cash? You always want to take more shares so that the element of compounding that we talked about in chapters 1 and 2 in January will be on our side. And that just builds up more shares. Plus, if we take a cash dividend, it will be declared as ordinary income and reported to the IRS. So in essence, we're going to have to end up paying taxes both to the federal government and state government. And we don't have to do that if we take stock dividends. So that is definitely what our goal is and what we want to do. The other element that you do get is voting rights. And when you own stock, companies will generally have their stockholders meeting in April next month. I just have gotten some notices from some of the companies I own stock in that you can vote for the officers and some of the resolutions. You just go online and do that. Again, we generally don't buy stock, to vote or to voice our opinion. We do it because we want to build wealth. Okay? Now, this is going to be the end of part 1, and then because the YouTube I think is too long to take the whole lecture, so I'm going to exit and then I'll come right back in, and you should be getting 2 links to take a look at, and we'll continue with our discussion on common stocks. Thank you.